So quick rundown. The way these meetings are going to run is we're going to go through each section of kind of our responsibilities and things that we're working on, and we're going to kind of provide updates about every single category. So the four things that we're kind of been tasked to do from the DAO is from BF is to do long form content, social, PR, and BD. So we're going to run through each of those, and we're just going to like every week we're just going to give you updates on each of these kind of categories that we're working on. As far as content, let me pull up another. So again, this is the main Notion where all the money happens. So what you're gonna see is the main thing I want to go through today is the content calendar. So this is what anybody that wants to know kind of what the Scribe guys are, where you can always come to this content calendar and see what is on the agenda. Okay, so today what we're going to see is on Beanbowl. We're going to put together what we imagine kind of Beanbowl to be is like a cross between kind of the bull stuff, like the Frax Bull, USDC Bull, whatever, like shit posting, plus like intern account. So it's kind of like a cross between the two is where we kind of see it. So first thing we're going to hit is we're going to recap the conversation between Poobs and Chris Black. Just to kind of show people. I think there's a lot of great insight there. I think there's a lot of great analogies, and he pushed back in a lot of great ways. So first thing you're going to see is today we're going to put out a kind of an intern note style. It's going to be like screenshot 2 to 3 pictures, just kind of giving a recap of the conversation with Chris Black. Right. Same thing you're going to see on Friday. We're going to recap the conversation that's going to happen tomorrow with Tenderman Timmy. So that's like one form of content you're going to see on the Beanbowl account. So tomorrow we're going to put up a Twitter thread kind of explaining and introducing bean farmers. So we're going to look for some community support on that, wrapping that thread up. But essentially what it's going to be like, what is bean farmers? Like, what is this new Twitter account? And like, why we're doing this. So it's going to hit a lot of things about like big picture mission. We're going to hit a lot of the USDC stuff. We're going to hit a lot of the Bology hyper Bitcoinization stuff. So I think it's going to be really topical. And I think that's going to be like a good kind of banger to come out to kind of launch the bean farmers account. Okay, so next week, as far as regular content, you're going to see we definitely want to be kind of meme shit posting we want to have some fun on the main Bean Farmers account because it's community owned, community driven, and obviously our community is a lot of fun. So we want to make sure we're expressing that to everybody.
That's Beanbowl, that account.
Yeah, sorry.
Or that post.
Yeah, so sorry. Beanbowl. Yeah, we're gonna have the meme going, and then on the Bean Farmers account, we're going to start this run of educational content, right? So the first one that we're going to hit is like, why bean, right? And so, if you guys want to check out, there's a Typefully link right here. If you guys want, I can kind of pull it up and show you guys what it looks like. It loads up, but essentially it's going to have it's going to be a Typefully link where anybody that wants to, and we can open this up to the entire community. Anybody that wants to come in there, and that is not it. I think maybe she posted the wrong link. I think there's that login issue that we had with the bean farmers that we had to change the password. But essentially, you'll see at the thread. As long as there's no objections to it, then it'll just go out and post on Monday. And so that's going to be a thread about why bean, why we think bean is important, kind of go to kind of more of like the thesis behind it, right? And then Tuesday, what you're going to see is probably a quote tweet or some kind of reply or meme from the Bean Farmers account. Wednesday, we're going to see our first long form article that's coming next Wednesday. So we're already working on it. We're going to try to get a draft in by Monday, and then Monday, Tuesday, we can kind of finish fixing it up, have Poobs look at it. Wednesday, we want that to go out. So Wednesday is going to be, so we're going to do like a trilemma analysis, right? Like why Bean is not only, decentralized, but it's also scalable, and it's also, has peg stability, right? So like, kind of the solve for the entire stablecoin trilemma. So we're going to put an article out kind of breaking that down, and then we're going to follow that with this would be the Twitter thread. So this is going to be the trilemma analysis, right? Here's an outline for it. We're going to define each term, why each of these things are important. We're going to give examples of the popular stablecoins, like, give a little bit of analogies as to, where everything else lies on this kind of triangle. The decentralization model, the DAO structure, peg mechanisms, like we're going to kind of outline all of that. This is going to turn into a nice long blog post. And then we're going to accompany it with a Twitter thread, right? Every blog post, we like to put a Twitter thread with it to make sure that, we're not just putting out these blog posts in a vacuum. It's like, we'll put a Twitter thread, and at the bottom, we'll link this blog post. So doubling kind of the view of not only like the Twitter and the blog, but also not only the Twitter, but then also making sure that the blog is getting like bumped. And so, more total impressions for the larger kind of, Bean website. And so that's something that we can pretty easily track through like GA, seeing that are these tweets and the effort we're putting in actually translating to like people being interested in the protocol, visiting the website, unique visitors, things like that. Next thing is like, we're going to put some tweets like, plugging the Barn Down meeting, right? So we're going to have like one post on the main kind of Beanstalk, the BF account. And then we're also going to have something on the Bean Farmers account, a little bit more, a little bit of a lower or easier tone, right? Where BF is going to be very like high level. This is going to be a little more, chill and relaxed and, talking about why people should join. And then on Friday, we're going to put out this thread about the field. And so we're basically going to be breaking down the field. And so essentially what you're going to expect and you're going to see is like across all of these different plots, you're going to see 2 to 3 long form threads a week on Twitter. You're going to see a long form article. And then that article is also going to be a Twitter thread. So it's going to be, I think one thing that we've learned from our time working with a lot of different projects is that Twitter threads are cheat codes. And especially when we have a community of people kind of behind us backing it, it's going to be pretty easy to get these things blowing up. And, total number of impressions, top of funnel, we're going to grow that. And then that's where the long form and the threads come in, is it's going to help smoothen out, like we talk about that middle of funnel, where people are going to have an easier time wrapping their head around exactly what the Beanstalk mechanisms are, what exactly is happening behind the scenes, why this is very different than every other stablecoin. One thing we want to make sure we're hitting is like that this is like a really big experiment and that this experiment is kind of important. And so kind of that's like the underlying kind of tone and theme of a lot of the content. So what you're going to see is, and so just like that, we're going to have, on a weekly basis, so like on this Wednesday, we'll have all of the regular tweets planned out for the following week. And then, for long form and threads, we already kind of have it planned out for basically all of April. So some of the long form that we're going to be hitting is like, okay, next week we're going to hit the trilemma. Week after that, we want to do a push of, Bean economics, peg mechanism, system incentives, are breaking all of that down, how it kind of works. Week after that, we want to hit, we want to do kind of like, a Q1 metric analysis, right? Like look at, the different seasons, what was all the big things that happened? What is the team working on? Just kind of a recap of the quarter. We also want to do that kind of monthly as well. So I keep everybody involved about what's going on, what everybody's working on, keep everybody on the know. And then same thing, it's going to be pushed to the Twitter thread. After that, it's like flavors of stable coins, right? We definitely want to keep this like fun Bean theme. So flavors of stable coins. And then, on top of that, we have like completely separate from this long form, it's like we have other educational Twitter threads that are going to come out every Monday on the Bean Farmers account, right? So we have, why Bean, right? Why is Bean important? Why are we kind of running this experiment? We have kind of this silo thread about like, what's the silo? Why is it important? We're going to have a thread on like the brief history of Beanstalk. So this week is, we're going to, start to do some of these recaps for these Twitter spaces on the content side. We're going to do this introduction kind of finally come out of stealth with the Bean Farmers account. So, we're definitely going to be kind of dropping links in the chat to make sure people are seeing and they kind of understand what's going on. But yeah, that's what kind of content and a little bit of social looks like. So those are our kind of content ideas. Again, more than welcome to like have input from the community about ideas that they have for long form. So if whoever has access to kind of the Bean Notion, and if you guys want access to like just our thing, like we can kind of have an open share link where we can share all that, but we have like an ideation section where we're thinking about all the different long form ideas that we're working on. We have more content ideas here, different ideas for Bean Bowl. So this is kind of like a brain dump of everything that we're thinking about. We take that brain dump and we structure it into like a week by week plan. We take that week by week plan and we put it back into the calendar, and then we're executing against the calendar. So boom, Black Recap's going to go out. Boom, Bean Farmers thread is going to go out. Recap of the Twitter space with Tim. And then from that next week, it's going to be really easy for us to kind of go out and just execute against all of this and make sure that, every day basically every account is at least getting a tweet out, multiple threads per week, and that people are saying, oh shit, like these guys are building, these guys are doing things, they're going to market, like, they're trying to. So I think they're covering most of content plus social.
The one thing that I'll add here and just kind of summarize and throw in is like this initial phase of what we're really going to be trying to do with a lot of these threads, obviously supplementing with like the Mimi stuff that announced like the other content that we're going to be putting out. But a lot of these threads are going to be like, here's the field, here's what it is explained in plain English, here's some screenshots from the platform. So that way anyone that is coming across this on Twitter and they're like, oh, I remember Beanstalk, they see it and they're like, okay, that's what that actually means. They recognize the screenshots from the platform. They'll go to the website and not be like intimidated by all the different terminology and everything. So that's like our big focus. And the things we're hitting is like field, barn, silo, market, and unwrite assets. So like those will be kind of those first 5 like really meaty threads about trying to just get people familiar with the terminology, getting screenshots in there, making it fun and very readable.
Yeah. So that's kind of the big thing that we find is the biggest issue where there's a lot of bounce rate, is that people are interested in the concept and they understand, like, maybe they understand algo, stable, and credit. Once you start to add, silo and sun and seasons and all of these kind of extra terminology, that's where we lose a lot of people. And for something like algo stables, there's a lot of kind of added weight to it just because of the past of different protocols. And so we need to kind of reframe that and do as much educational legwork in this first phase of content, which is going to be like education, right? Everything you see here that we're putting out, besides like the recaps and stuff, and I think there's still pretty educational content, like everything that we're putting out is a very, very educational theme to it. And that's exactly essentially what we're going to focus on for probably for a lot of the quarter, right? I mean, at a certain point, there's like not too much we can educate on. And then we'll start to like, do other kind of maybe forward-looking content about what's on the roadmap, what's coming. But we're going to continue to kind of fold in educational content, recaps, go back, repurpose a lot of that older educational content, because we feel like that's where the gap is in kind of acquiring more community members, users. So one of the big things that we're going to keep a really close eye on as far as metrics of success is like Discord members, because we feel like that is one of our strongest like bottom of funnel strategies, is like getting people into the Discord, because we know that, there's a lot of people that like live in this Discord, which is like insane, and like probably one of the most, engagement per user that we've ever seen. And so making sure that we're taking advantage of that and knowing that once we get people into this Discord, we can convert them into like, being NFT, like, holders and PFPs. So, but the problem is getting them to the point where they feel comfortable enough in the community to join it and not letting them bounce in that middle. So that's what the entire educational push is going to be. This is what content's going to look like on that educational front. So yeah, open any questions, thoughts, like feel free to hop in. If not, I'm just going to keep going through it.
So do you guys, as far as like, so for example, this Twitter Spaces this evening is happening. Do you guys view your role as like the end-to-end, hey, we're going to announce in Discord it's happening, hey, here's a reminder tweet from the Beanstalk Farms Twitter account as well? Or is that not something you guys want to be spending time on?
If we can get help with some of the Discord stuff, that would help us out a lot. One, Discord's not like really in scope for us. We don't really do too much community stuff because and the reason for that is that in our experience, Discord is, best run by like community members, right? So like, what we've seen is like, some of the most successful communities are, the ones where you see the founders and the team incredibly active. So I'll give you an example. Let's keep it in the stablecoin realm, right? Frax, for example, right? Frax has been able to build a really strong community with almost like not a lot of marketing. Why? Because you see Sam K in the Discord and the Telegram all day answering questions, right? So community is kind of something that we think should come from within. And if we can get things planned out a little more in advance, as far as some of these Twitter Spaces, then we can kind of help out at least. So Discord announcements, that's something that we can take on, but I want to make sure that there's like a good handoff there where there's not like, slipping cracks. So maybe give us like, if you could kind of help us out, finish out this week. And then once we start to take over the planning of that, as far as like, and that's also what's on the line is like, managing and getting more people for more Twitter spaces. Then it'll be easier for us to manage the announcements of that, because like it's a lot easier when we have a lot of time to plan these things out. So at least for like Tenderman Timmy and for the rest of this week, if you guys, like Guy, if you could help us kind of make sure that we get that main BF account tweet out there. But then from next week, once we have a little bit of time to get things planned out over the next like month, right? So like what we want to do is like, okay, let's finish this and then we'll get on to the next thing. So if you can help us kind of finish out this week on the Beanstalk Farms account, and then, obviously you don't have to worry about Bean Bulls and you don't have to worry about, Beanstalk Farmers. The only thing that might be a little bit of issue is like some of these maybe DAO announcements, call announcements. So if you guys can help us out with that, then we can handle everything else basically.
Totally. To me, it's not time sensitive at all. I mean, you guys didn't even get Twitter access till yesterday, so I'm not worried about, this week, next week, just trying to understand philosophically. So yeah, that all sounds great here.
And like over time, it's gonna help. We're gonna get there. It's more about making sure that we have the systems in place to be able to make sure that nothing slips through the cracks. Because there's nothing worse than like, oh, okay, we had this DAO call and like nobody knew about it, right? Because we didn't tweet about it, right? So if we just get a little support there, then we can handle and focus on all the things.
100%. And I'm sure in the future you guys will be organizing a lot of the spaces and such happening, and such that are happening. So, in this instance, like we set it up so we have context on, what it is, when it's happening, etc. So yeah, not worried about, this particular spaces or this week or anything like that.
Yeah, so boom, you hit me on my second point, PR. So first thing we're doing is we're already in the process of pitching out Poops for podcasts. A little tough because of the Anon thing. So we're working with and talking to a couple different groups that are interested. We've gotten a little bit of pushback over the Anon thing, but I think I think it's something that I'm not really too worried about. So we're in the process of pitching out for pods, and we're also going to start helping getting more guests for Twitter Spaces. So that's another thing that we're working on is,
what do you mean by the Anon thing? I don't mean to
just
interrupt.
like the fact that, please do. No problem. Anyone interrupting. By the Anon thing, I mean like some podcasts that we are in contact with are not too much of, because a lot of times they're on YouTube, and a lot of these guys run on YouTube. And the problem is that they feel like they don't get as much viewership or as much success from their podcast when it's not, face to face, and it's like both people kind of recording on YouTube, and then they also do the podcast thing, right? So it's like it's posted on YouTube and it's posted on actual Apple Podcast, Spotify, whatever. So them that are a little more YouTube centric have find that they don't have as much success when the other guest doesn't show their face. So it's like one guy showing their face and one not.
Well, so talking. Ben has been on a lot of podcasts with his video on, so I don't think that they would object to that at all. Not to speak on their behalf, but everyone knows their names. They turn their video on for some of the podcasts. I think we just gotta ask them and check.
Okay. Yeah. So then,
I wanted to clarify that.
Oh no, that's awesome, because I didn't know that he had been doing that. So that's awesome context for us. I think I'll make sure that I kind of run it by him, or we say
Definitely.
that he's turning on this, but that makes it way easier to start pitching it out. So 100%, I'll kind of go back to some of those guys and let them know that. So podcasts we're working on. We're going to start working on lists for Twitter Space guests over the next few weeks. So we're going to try to kind of plan out, having. Do you guys think that and I think this is also conscious of like, Poobs and everybody's bandwidth and like how much freedom and free time they have. But is it like maybe a one time per week cadence a little bit better, or you guys think it's maybe better for two? I mean, obviously more is better, but I think it's like kind of dependent on the bandwidth of the guys. So I don't know, Guy, if you have any like context or ideas there about like, you think maybe one time is better? Do you think like we can do 2 times consistently, just so I can think about how we can schedule and plan these out?
Let's ask. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because like if we can find a set time and we can kind of block up time, we're like, hey, every week we're gonna do, bean spaces on like every, whatever, Wednesday at 1 p.m. Central, right? Then, it becomes a little bit easier to kind of find people and slot them in. Sometimes you do need a little bit of flexibility for some bigger or like, kind of cooler guests. But what the focus is on for the first few weeks is like, we want to get some of these like stablecoin guys on to talk about kind of stables. So like, guys that we're looking at to reach out are like, guys like, so as far as podcasts, like we're looking at Flywheel Pod, we're going to try to get, Poobs on Flywheel. Where as far as Twitter Spaces goes, we're looking at like Amit, the guy who did Rye. Obviously the goal would be to get Sam K, and I think getting on Flywheel is going to help us get a little closer to Sam K, because we want to be in these kind of bigger discussions and these more philosophical discussions about stablecoins. And we think that obviously guys that have a pretty good presence and a good brand definitely can't hurt. So that's like kind of the type of guys. I think you guys have a pretty good relationship with the Ampleforth guys. So that's another kind of group that we're looking at. I think same thing with the Dyad guys. Like these are the type of guys where, having a lot of these philosophical discussions about stables is the focus. So looking at reaching out to more Twitter Spaces guests, and I'll put this in kind of the meeting notes that we're going to run through after, but if you can help get us like a solidified timing, maybe once a week. So it's not, it's something we can do consistently in perpetuity. It's not like 2 times a week, every single week is a little tough to do consistently. So it's just like, hey, one time, every single week, this time, this day, we're going to do a Twitter space. And we're going to invite different people on at those times, different, and then there's also like, different guys that have, like do threads on Twitter and talk about this kind of stuff and talk about stables. And, I think like, there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of go about sectioning it, but we're trying to go in like categories. So like first category, maybe over the next month, or like stablecoin founders, right? So we want to get, Amin, we want to get, Sam K, we want to get the Ample guys, we want to get the Dyad guy, Joey, right? And then like, boom, that's the first month. Then second month, we can talk about more like, like protocol structure and like, protocol structuring and economics, right? And then we can get other guys that have done a really great job of that, like maybe like Seb from Gains and things like that. We can go on and on talking about like how do you structure a protocol, and so that's the way that we're kind of thinking of that. So open any suggestions or feedbacks or thoughts, or we're definitely going to come to the community and ask if there's someone that we're reaching out to and we maybe don't have a super warm connection to, then we definitely want to like have the community. We know a lot of you guys are super resourceful, so we're going to be reaching out to different people and saying like like, hey, is this something, or does anyone know this person, or anyone can get us an intro to this guy so that we can ask them to come on. So more the more help there the merrier. And then last thing, BD. So this is something that we've been having a little bit of trouble thinking through, and so I want to maybe turn this into an open discussion for everybody. Is when we think about doing BD and protocols that we think could have a lot of mutually beneficial win-win scenarios, the problem that we keep running into as we rack our brains for this are to the roadmap for Wells, right? So like a lot of things that we were kind of looking at, or maybe DEXs, and then now with Wells kind of on the horizon, we don't want to kind of mess with the roadmap at all or cause any issues. Not that necessarily it would, but I'd love if anybody had any ideas about different types of protocols or different maybe categories of protocols that we think could be great for either integrations or partnerships, or so like the easy one would be like DAOs, right? If we can go and do a bunch of BD with DAOs and convince them that ideologically, instead of holding USDC on the balance sheet, you should hold Bean, right? Not that they would allocate like the whole thing, but hey, allocate like 5% of your treasury and put it in the silo for, if nothing else, than like an ideological, like you believe in algo stables and like, USD is kind of like failing and dying. Like that's an interesting kind of place. I don't think that's necessarily the best place to start and the most value add. So looking for maybe some ideas or thoughts. And I think, like like guys like Mochi and Silo Chat, like I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this about where you think we can have positive sum integrations in a business development kind of sensor category. Are there protocols that come to mind where you're like, oh, it would be cool to see beans integrated into here? Or, would it be cool to see, beans added to like, LP in this DEX, or like, maybe some ways we can do like, some liquidity mining, or it's very difficult because of the kind of silo, and where like the positive carry comes a lot from the silo. So there's always just like base partnerships for the sake of like calling it a partnership, and that's a lot of like, I think we're going to get a lot of that when we do a lot of this like PR outreach for Twitter Spaces and things like that. But yeah, go ahead, Silo.
Yeah, the first place I would start is well, there's a lot of places to start, but one idea would be something like a TBTC pair in Wells. I think there's a decentralization angle there. There's a liquidity angle there.
Okay. And you feel that way because it's just a value aligned place where we can get a Bean TBTC pair for, just kind of like that. Okay. I get where you're coming from. I think that's a really good idea. Is that maybe the category that you see a lot of successes, like these very value aligned? Go ahead, guy.
I was just going to say, I mean, from the perspective of spinning up more wells, feel like the BD work to be done is primarily finding like a capital partner on the other side to seed the pool. Because anyone can, once we have the Wells UI, anyone can push a couple buttons to spin up a Bean TBTC pair, but to me, that's the work to be done.
And so then how can we incentivize them in order to pull that liquidity in the pool, right? Because it's a lot to ask. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on numbers for that. Like how much liquidity we should be asking for, right? Is it like, 100K? Is it 250? Is it 500? I would think it's probably something close to like 50 to 100. And that's not a massive ask.
Well, I mean, maybe to zoom out just a little bit, in the current, or in Wells V1, the only reason for someone to provide liquidity in a well is if there is some protocol native, liquidity incentive. In the case of Beanstalk, that's stock. Some other protocol could have some incentive to provide liquidity to a particular well. But because of that, I mean, I don't think there's really been any conversations around, or many at all, with much depth around like all the potential wells we should be spinning up, how many of those, which of those we should be whitelisting in the silo, and to what extent, stock and seed should be allocated to those, if that's worth doing before the introduction of a more formal gauge system where all of this is more flexible, where the DAO can decide in real time what wells to provide, incentives to, and which to not provide incentives to. So yeah, I don't know that I have a good answer for you on the amounts. That would sort of, in my opinion, come from, how much the DAO is incentivizing a particular pair, which I don't have any super helpful answers to at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's I guess what I've been thinking.
Yeah, just and to talk about the Beanstalk stuff specifically, and Puis has talked a little bit about how, I mean, a lot of the utility of Beanstalk comes from the silo yield, and it's the silo yield that loses Bean's fungibility on some level, and so deposits are being tokenized as 1155s in the next couple months, hopefully pods shortly after, and until then, it's hard to imagine any meaningful integrations being put in place. I remember one particular thing that was being worked on pre-exploit, which was kind of interesting, was the ability to take loans against pods. But again, from a technical perspective, that's probably going to, well, even just from an economics perspective, like that is hard to imagine happening until there's, significantly more liquidity on the pod market. So yeah, it's tough. It's, it's like a chicken and egg problem, as they say.
Yeah, exactly. So not
Like
something,
when you say you guys are lost, it's like, well, we're lost on the, at least the integrations front in the next like 2 to 3 months per se.
yeah, agreed there. I think this is something, not something we have to like answer and have this awesome answer for right away. I think it's something to kind of keep in mind for all of us. And, like all of our heads are better than, one of our brains. And so if you guys come across any protocols that you think are very value aligned, mission aligned, that you think are relatively easy to integrate, or opportunities where, okay, you guys already have this basket of stable coins, like why don't you guys add one more? Then I think those are great opportunities. I think, I think definitely the silo fungibility is going to help a lot there. So
I think the lowest hanging fruit is probably with like the very obvious silo pairs. Like, there's a Bean LUSD pool pre-exploit that, introduced Beanstalk to some folks in their community. Not sure if that's really an integration or a partnership per se, because it's all permissionless, but I mean, like you said, it's good to just like, start thinking about this stuff and make sure we're talking about it.
That's a question. What's an example?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to ask, does anyone have an example of this kind of integration, but for another stablecoin?
So I'll give you an example. Okay, so let's say, Gains Network, instead of using a US, so let's look at a perp exchange, right? If you look at Gains Network, they use a DAI pool in order to back all of their trades, right? So your counterparty in the trades is DAI. So, if you win your trade, you get DAI. If you lose your trade, you give DAI, right? If you look at a similar, GMX, they use a mix of USDC and Bitcoin and ETH. If you look at Vela Exchange, they use USDC. So, I mean, that's like kind of a weirder example, and maybe with the lack of full peg stability, but, I think there's some cool things and some people that we're talking to that I think that there can be like a kind of like mini perp market. So that there's this project that's, maybe 8 weeks out from mainnet. It's called, the main project is called Ola Finance, but they're launching like this sub project or second project. So Ola Finance is more like a lending protocol, but the second project is called Ola. It's under the same kind of big name brand, but it's kind of like a individual perp pools. So if imagine if you could use so that's definitely integration when they come out that we can definitely get. It's like, imagine if you can have a perp platform where you can trading perpetual futures, and you put up your beans, and we seed the main pool with a bunch of beans. And so if you win your trade, you take beans out of that pool because you won against like kind of think of it more like a house almost. And then if you lose, then you're taking your beans that you're putting up as collateral and you deposit those into the pool, right? So it's essentially using that the collateral or counterparty for trades. That is a pretty good use case that could suck a lot of beans out of circulation, I think, but also the silo would make that a lot more usable, where it's like, you can deposit beans and silos potentially. So I think that is something that would be interesting, right? We're thinking about ways to kind of suck up liquidity. So like, putting a bunch of beans into a TBTC pair to suck up a lot of liquidity. I'm trying to think of other things. I think like, Frax does a lot of different partnerships. So I think we can go back and kind of go through, and I think this is a great idea of like going back and going through every LUSD category, every Frax in every single partnership that all of these guys have done, and seeing where we can integrate, right? Like obviously, a lot of devs are going to be a little bit skittish on the lack of dollar parity. I think there's plenty of protocols where it's a little more like, one bean in, one bean out, not thinking about the price of bean in USD. That can be good integrations where it's not as necessarily peg specific, like it's, the dollar amount doesn't matter as much as it's like, hey, you're getting one bean and you're putting in one bean, you're getting one bean back. So things that are more asset based than price denominated. I think you bring up a great point, which is that, we should like look back through all the other big stables, right? Even like Ampleforth, where that's, peg is kind of flying all day, every day. I think maybe Spot's fixed that a little bit, but look at some of the integrations and things that they've done. So yeah, I definitely want to make sure we write that down and make sure.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, right? Because if we go to these devs and their number one concern is that the peg is off, that tells us something, right? Because Beanstalk is always going to fluctuate, right? Beanstalk makes no guarantees about peg. So maybe either we are just completely wrong about how the market will accept Beanstalk when we can't make promises about the peg, or we just need to educate people that it's okay for the peg to fluctuate a little bit, and in exchange you get complete decoupling from the outside world, right? Like you get complete decoupling from the risks of real world assets such as USDC, the banking system, like all that stuff, right? So maybe that's like a trade-off that people would appreciate if they understood, if that's
exactly right. It's like, one bean doesn't have to equal 91 cents. Like one bean equals one bean, as long as that's what the protocol needs. And it's like, obviously smart contracts are closed loop, right? So it doesn't really matter what the outside price is. I think it adds another level of security in that you don't need like an entire Oracle system, because it's just like, one bean and how many beans are in there. So you don't need an Oracle to pull price. So things like perps where you don't have to get the price of bean, but it's just like, you either win, if you win 10% on a trade, you get 10% more beans than you collateralized for the trade. I think those are good things. And so like anything that we think can suck up liquidity, to take beans off of the open market, or maybe take some beans out of something like 3Curve so we can get a better, like a more balanced 3Curve and get back to like 50% or even lower than 50%, is things that we're thinking about. So at the end of the day, if anyone has any ideas for that, like all ears, happy to like, and if anyone is open to kind of shooting the shit and maybe at a different time and kind of going back and forth on this, or, we can continue doing this here, like more than happy to. Like, love having this conversation, because I do think it's important. So that's most of our agenda for this week. But yeah, happy to like kind of, stay back. And I know we talked about keep it like last like 10, 15 minutes for like questions, thoughts, more of these type of discussions. Like, let's do it. Like open floor, open mic.
I'll just throw this in on the, related to the quote unquote BD front. And it's less clear how this is directly beneficial to Beanstalk, but Red Beans and I were talking about how, one of the main value adds of the current implementation of Wells is the Oracle framework. And, on some level, it would be great to like, tell people about that, like new protocol devs, things like that. Red Beans, did you want to share briefly what you were thinking on that front? Or maybe, you may not have the BD plan per se, but like what it is that we should be trying to share, at least in theory.
Yeah. And I think we're sort of starting to, this is still in progress, but I guess my thoughts here are like, the sorts of protocols that we should be sharing sort of the DEX updates or the Wells architecture with are those who are planning to like launch a token into a decentralized exchange and need to, have some liquidity pool or some liquidity against their token. And then also need to like read the price of those tokens from the pool using an Oracle. So, how to find those specific people is, still sort of unsure, and hopefully that's something we can sort of come together and come up with a strategy with. But I think those are sort of the sorts of protocols that we should be trying to share the information with regards to the new DEX architecture.
Yeah, that's
think
that's a really
You want to go each on or am I going? Okay. I was just gonna add, like, in terms of what you touched on with the Oracle thing there, I think that as we discussed at our last meeting earlier this week, the more technical call, we were wanting to maybe go over that stuff in a little bit more detail and kind of understand at a deeper level the deck wells integration and then specifically like that Oracle that you just mentioned because those details will be really helpful for us in terms of thinking about exactly what you just mentioned and finding the people to partner with. And then
Totally.
like educational stuff that will come after those.
I think, you know, we can totally dig into the details, but just to give you, you know, sort of a high level overview, like one of the value adds of the DEX architecture initially is that any protocol can basically launch, you know, their liquidity pool or liquidity well, and they can use an Oracle framework or Oracle implementation that Beanstalk Farms has developed pretty much out of the box, which should save them a lot of time if they're planning to, you know, build and design and gas optimize and audit and deploy their own Oracle. So yeah, definitely we can get into the details of that, but at a high level overview, that's sort of the sticking point for Wells V1.
Yeah, that's super helpful.
Yeah, I think
So
starting to think about integrations and things for the oracles and wells are going to be really key. You know, I think the Oracle specifically is something very different than other architectures, like a Chainlink or a Band. So it's something like one. I mean, yeah, I know we talked about doing another deep dive, and I think what we decided on is maybe another deep dive closer to Wells launch, so that we can have it a little more Wells focused. But yeah, these are all definitely great things to keep in mind.
totally don't want to derail the conversation on, you know, the sort of protocols that Beanstalk itself should be integrating with, but I think there is a pretty specific value add to some protocols who are hoping to launch a token and need to manage their liquidity somewhere. So, yeah, we'll definitely continue to have this conversation in the future, but I think it's something we should be sort of shouting from the rooftops, I think.
So I have another philosophical question about what the best way to, you know, work with you guys is. So I'll give a specific example. So let me drop a couple links in the voice chat. So the TLDR of this particular project was that Yearn launched this little tool to ask a bunch of questions to an open AI model that gives you back answers from the docs and things like that. And someone expressed interest in getting paid a grant to work on it. So it's effectively in a state where we could share it. And so what's like the right way to surface this kind of thing with you guys and figure out, like, you know, what does it mean to launch this thing? Like, should we just write a little brief Twitter thread from the Beanstalk Farms account with a link? I mean, that was what I would do in a vacuum without you guys, but curious if you have any input there. I just dropped a couple relevant links in the voice chat.
This is awesome. I'm definitely going to spend like the next 3 hours playing with this. No, this is awesome. This is going to help us out so much. I think who put this together? I mean, this is super cool.
The name's Crypto Wizard. I think at the moment it seems pretty good as far as answers go, but it is only on top of the Farmer's Almanac at the moment. So it's limited to what's in there, but yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
The white paper and stuff.
I think there were some limitations with, like, it would slow it down a lot to add things like the white paper. So I believe it's currently just the Gitbook. As far as answers it has.
I think
I sort of view this as a more of a fun thing than this is how everyone will learn about Beanstalk, but maybe when we get to GPT-5, I guess the prevailing question is like, you guys are the marketing aficionados.
We could do like a FAQ. Like we could just enter a bunch of common questions and have it like spit out the answers, and maybe put those on the blog or something, and then write a thread to show it off a little bit and link to that.
Yeah, and I think one thing that just comes to my mind is like a lot of pointing this at like within threads or whatnot. Just keeps meaning to mention this, and like announcement thing, we can talk a little bit more in terms of trying to shoot on some ideas, but like just kind of steadily pushing us as a feature that can be used that people need to learn a little bit more if they have like very targeted questions that they need answered.
Could still solicit questions too through like the bean_farmers Twitter, and be like, all right, we're gonna take your questions and we'll run them through this and post the answers, something like that. Would be a good engagement type of thing.
I love that. So I guess as a matter of process, like maybe I'll just drop this kind of stuff in our Discord channel with a little explanation of like, hey, the thing is like about ready to go. What do you guys think as far as, or just like put it on your radar sooner rather than later is what I'll try to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we'll schedule some stuff in the it's super cool. I don't know if there might be like a load capacity that it's at right now, because it's not spitting out and I'm just getting a perpetual loading thing, but it could be my side.
We DDoSed it with the people on this call.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Darn. All right, well, I'll let them know that. That's good data.
Yeah, stuff like this is awesome. It just it's a chance to show off like how cool and engaged the community is, and like that's gonna bring people in just as much as the educational stuff. So, great idea here.
Be based.
Also, just want to flag to you guys that as you encounter people on Twitter or in the community or whatever, like would love to encourage more of this type of behavior where people are like building their own sort of hack projects in and around Beanstalk, whether that's something like this, which, just breaks down the docs, or maybe it's some sort of, UI to view Beanstalk's data in a different way, or maybe it's like a whole, a protocol that interacts with Beanstalk. But all of that stuff is something that from the Beanstalk Farms perspective, we're interested in supporting. And, I'm kind of around Discord all the time to talk about those things. So if you see stuff like that, definitely like direct it our way and encourage it. And I think we can all kind of, put some effort into getting more of this type of thing built, just like, by community members. Because I totally agree. It's really powerful.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's definitely a lot of ways we could push the like community grants program in our marketing.
One quick other thing. Did you guys want to try to set up another Q&A session? What was the verdict there?
Yeah, no, I think we decided. Wait, yes, Ethan? I thought we decided for now that we were fine.
Yes, I agree with you.
And that we're
yeah. What we decided is that maybe we'll wait. I think we feel in a pretty good spot now, and we'll do another one when we get a little closer to Wells launch, and a little more focused on Wells. I think as far as like regular beat stuff, I think we're pretty good.
Sweet. Well, hit us up anytime.
I might want to come to you guys before the first blog post that I do, just to get a few questions answered and get, some insider perspective on how, Bean is unique in the stablecoin trilemma. I already had some questions that I was thinking of just doing the outline, so I'll reach out about that soon.
Cool. And I also remember you guys had on that calendar a couple tweet threads this week. Do you want a review on those? What do you guys think?
So
Yeah, I think we added. Go ahead, Ishan.
I think for some of these more like, simple, like more recap type things like Bean Bowl and stuff like that. I like, some of these intern note type stuff, I think we're okay. I think we'll update all the links in the Typefully because some of those may be more educational ones. I think at least for the first couple, where we're definitely going to want to get some eyes on them. So I think maybe we'll refer back to you guys with like a list of things to look over as we kind of get like the good long form stuff going.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So we, the machine is flipping on. Things are moving and grooving. I think you guys are going to get pretty excited about the stuff you're going to see. I think we're going to see a lot of like really great engagement. We're going to definitely rely on you guys to help supplement a lot of that early engagement to get things like the Bean Farmers account off the ground. So like you're going to see some things like us, posting, some of the links to tweets in the Scribe channel, and we'll be kind of throwing a bunch of @heres and stuff like that. So, definitely we'll look to the community for support, but, there's a lot of opportunity to grow. So we're pretty pumped on what you guys are going to see. And again, as always, like always open to feedback, thoughts, ideas, takes, what everybody's, kind of is about what we're doing. Yeah, you guys can always hit me in DMs. Trying to be a little better about being a little more responsive on Discord. But yeah, like kind of cleaning everything up and getting out of the cesspool that it used to be. So you can always hit me in the DMs, get any questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, anything like that.
Alrighty.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
It was good.